8 years in, 3 jobs later, what are some things that I would do differently now if I was searching for work here in Italy? The first thing that I would do would be to do my homework on what it actually means to work in this country. Now, this goes beyond the stereotypes that you've probably already heard about, it being really difficult to find a job in Italy, that even Italians leave the country for opportunities, and also in the sense that there tend to be more jobs in the north compared to the south or other parts of Italy, because that is where bigger businesses tend to be. I'm sure you've heard all of those, but I'm talking about going a lot deeper than that, because for me, that is like surface level. For example, INPS, which is the government body behind pensions in Italy, they produce an annual report which is completely free to download. I will put the link below in the description so that you can have a little look yourself. But this report details the state of employment, pensions, and pay in Italy. And it's a really, really interesting read. Now, shame on me, because 8 years down the line, this year was the first year that I actually realised that this report existed and even bothered to look at it. And let me tell you something, having done so, I think it should be essential reading for anyone who wants to move to Italy and find a job here, because you need to come in with your eyes wide open. You need to know what you are letting yourself in for. Now, I think when I first moved here, as I spoke about in my integration video, I'll link it up here if you haven't seen it, I definitely didn't do that. I came here completely blind and oblivious to the way the working world was here. And as such, I made so many comparisons in my first job that it left me feeling pretty miserable. Consider like my first job working at the Montessori school in Napoli paid me less than I earned when I was working in a shop part-time as I was studying back in the UK. So it's this, but because I hadn't done my homework before, I came in completely blind. I didn't really open my eyes to the reality of these kinds of situations. Now, it's not just when you first move here and you're looking for work that you need to be kind of eyes about, paying attention to these kinds of things, but really the kind of homework never stops, because one thing I've learned in 8 years is that as an employee, you are not told the information that you need. It falls on your shoulders and it becomes your responsibility to understand what your rights are and to understand the way systems here work. And so another example can be that if you do land a job here in Italy, depending on your company, depending on the way it's structured, you may have what is known as a collective labour agreement contract, which basically means that you will be given a 1 to 2 page summary of your role and pay. But if you want to go deeper into the intricacies, the terms and conditions of your contract, notice periods, etc., you then have to go onto the website for that labour collective agreement and see what those terms and conditions are for your role. And that can take a few people by surprise, because certainly in the UK, when you sign a contract, everything about your role is contained within that one document. But here you have to go on and continue to do the research yourself. So this is what I mean when I say that it's not just the initial stages that you need to be doing kind of research and understanding systems better, but also as you continue to work here. And also, the reason I say this is because sometimes people take advantage of the fact that maybe you don't know the systems here properly enough. I can give a personal example about this, because one of the schools I worked at in the past required me to open what is known as a Partita Iva, which essentially means that I was going to be doing this freelancer position. And what that meant was that I was responsible for my own taxes. I had to have an accountant, all of the above. But little did I know that with that type of Partita Iva, I, as a freelancer, could determine my hours. I could say that I wasn't available on a particular day. And technically the school could do nothing because I was not employed with a contract at that school. So, give or take a couple of years down the line, I needed to go to a funeral. And I'll be honest with you, the school made me feel completely rubbish about that request. And they said I couldn't go because they didn't have cover and blah, blah, blah. But I was a freelancer and I didn't know my rights enough then to be able to say, excuse me, you are giving me structured hours with a timetable, which means I shouldn't be a freelancer. I should be a person with a contract. I didn't know that then until it was too late. So learn from me, okay? Please continue to research everything about your rights and responsibilities. Unfortunately, there are far too many people, especially here in the South, I would say, this is where my experiences stem from, that will take advantage of the fact that you might not know the systems, or that you come from another country and so, you might just be grateful to have work here in the first place. Please understand your rights and responsibilities as an employee. Please understand the types of contract that you have, what that means for you. Understand what it means to open a Partita Iva and work for a company as a freelancer. Don't make organizations make you feel bad for something that you just didn't know enough about, okay? So that is the biggest thing for me. Do your homework and make sure you never ever stop learning about what it really means to work in this country. The next thing I would do is that I would critically evaluate my skills and qualifications, because this is the thing. You might move here and not have the exact requirements for a particular role, but you might have transferable skills. Now, this was my experience. I started off working as an English, it was a support teacher at the beginning, and then it transferred into a teaching role. But I didn't have any experience in that field. I mean, I'd previously been an entrepreneur and before that a police officer. But what I did have were transferable skills that could work within the teaching capacity. Things like communication, empathy, patience, problem-solving skills, ability to think on your feet. You know, all of these things really helped me in those early days of transitioning into this career. And I can tell you that if I'd worded my CV coming at it from like those kinds of backgrounds and hadn't bothered to kind of mention how my skills could be transferable, I'm not sure I would have got the job. I essentially worded it in a way that showed that even though I didn't have direct experience in these areas, I had the skills that could mean it was possible. And, you know, I've never had a problem finding a job as an English teacher since. So what I would say to you is really look at your skill set. Even if you don't have the exact experience in your own country and you're moving here, what transferable skills do you have? Because I can guarantee you there's going to be at least one skill that you have that could transfer over into a role here. But of course, you're going to have to be realistic as well. And this means being realistic about your own language levels. Now, the reason I got into teaching English in the first place was because I recognized when I moved here that my Italian level was pretty non-existent. And so stepping into the field of teaching gave me the opportunity to work here where the main focus of my day would be in speaking in English. So you do have to be realistic about your language skills as to the type of work that you apply for. Because if you're still learning the language, but you don't feel confident enough to do, work transactions or speak with colleagues in Italian, then maybe you need to start off doing one particular role until you build your confidence in the language and your skills before then transitioning to what it is that you really, really want to do. I think you must consider language. It's so important. And I think if you don't feel confident enough in your skills, then you might need to pivot for a little bit until you do. I would also say to start lower in terms of career when you begin, because I didn't begin as a full-blown teacher. I started as a teaching assistant. Now, what that meant was that I was able to gain all important experience, and then my contract eventually got renewed into that of a teacher position. And from there, every school I've worked at has been based on the experience I've gained to date, because there does come a point when your qualifications and the skills that you have become less important compared to the experience you've gained. And so you need to get your foot on the career ladder, so to speak. So I think you just have to perhaps lower your expectations at the beginning. You might not get an equivalent job to the one you have now in your country immediately here, but that's okay, because essentially what you need to gain is experience of working in this country, because not only will it help you for any future careers that you decide to apply for, but it's also going to help you within yourself learn what it actually means to work in this country. And it helps to integrate you in a way like nothing else, to actually be working here, paying taxes towards this country, understanding the way systems work from a different perspective, meeting different people. Working in Italy, I think, gives you the biggest insight into this country than anything else. And so I think if you just get your foot on the ladder, even if it's not the exact position that you really, really wanted, it's enough to begin with. And as I've said before, at some point, people will be looking more at your experience than they will be at those initial qualifications that you have. The next thing I want to say is that I would really be honest about whether going for something like a role as an English teacher is really for you. Now, the reason I talk about this here is because a lot of people do naturally decide that this could be the career for them because of the ease of not needing to speak Italian to do it. But what I would say is that being an English teacher, as I've spoken about in this video up here, requires so many skills that not everybody has, and it requires a degree of passion that many people lack. Not only that, but also you've got to consider, depending on the school you work for, your hours could be pretty unsociable, pretty demanding, like, working until late of an evening, working even on a Saturday. So you've got to really factor all of these in to decide if it could be the career for you. And talking about the elephant in the room, the pay is not going to be life-changing. So you just got to think about all of these things, okay? Like, what are your expectations? Can you really do the job of a teacher? Like, considering everything that's involved, everything that's asked for you, and for the fact that your pay will be like the national minimum at best. Like, does that work for you and the life that you want? Because I see too many people doing this role, even to this day here in Italy, and they do it just to have a job, just to have a paycheck, just to have some kind of security here, but their heart is not in it. And unfortunately, it radiates from every fibre of your being. So I can only say to you, at least be honest with yourself. Is this something you could do? Can you even explain the language to someone? Because we grow up naturally learning it, but how are you able to explain that to somebody? Because people will come to you with some very obscure questions sometimes about why certain words exist or certain structures. And sometimes the questions just don't have an answer. It's just the way that it is. But sometimes it's a little nuance of the language that, if you don't know how to explain, can end up creating even more confusion. So just be real with yourself. I don't think this is a one-size-fits-all job here in Italy at all. And I think more people need to be honest about that. But I do think that if you do fit the requirements of being an English teacher, it can be one of the most rewarding jobs. I've taught hundreds of students to date in 8 years, and I can honestly tell you I've learned something from each and every one. And that is the most wonderful thing. And I actually feel very integrated into life here now because I've had this kind of an experience. So it's a great career path in that respect, but you've got to figure out whether all the other parts of it really work for you too. Now, when it comes to finding a job in Italy, depending on what kind of job you're looking for, I would start putting the feelers out, so to speak, trying to seek connections for potential job opportunities as soon as you can. LinkedIn is used a lot here in Italy, so that could be a really, really great way to sort of have a little look around and see what jobs are available. You've obviously got websites that you can go and have a look on for different jobs in Italy, but also considering going into some Facebook groups. Sometimes people know somebody, especially when it comes to teaching English. Often people will go into these expat groups and talk about vacancies at schools that they work at. So you just never know, but you've got to be kind of putting your feelers out everywhere in as many different places as you can in order to find the jobs that you're interested in. When I applied to work in Italy, I literally sent my CV to all of the different schools that I could find within the area of Salerno that I was interested in then. And I looked on the website as well, and I just did what I had to do. And essentially that's what led to me having the interview at the Montessori school in Napoli and securing my first job here. So you are going to have to put the work in. You're going to have to think outside the box. You're going to have to use a number of different resources. But definitely, as I've said in all of my content, Italy runs on connections. And so if you're able to know someone who knows someone who knows someone, that will definitely get you a foot in the door much quicker than if you go in cold. So really work on those connections, as I've spoken about a lot in my content, because it helps you in so many areas of your life, but especially when it's time to look for a job. You also need to accept the conditions for what they are here in Italy. Now, this is not an easy pill for people to swallow, because the conditions here sometimes make no sense. The fact that salaries have remained pretty much stagnant for years, for the fact that, working conditions can vary from one region to the next, for the fact that some companies don't do things by the book the way that they should. But you just have to accept things for the way that they are here. Trust me, I've had my fair share of experiences here to date to tell you that if I were to continue to be stressed about those experiences, I probably wouldn't still be working or living in Italy. At some point, you've just got to be like, pazienza, this is the way that it is. It's not right, but trust me, there are so many Italians that maintain these conditions, put up with them, and they don't say anything. Maybe because there's not much that can be done in this country, because a lot of these problems are very, very, very deep rooted. But also because I think, especially in the South, people are in need of work. And the fact is, people will say yes to conditions that are not quite right for them because there is this need to earn money for their family and to support themselves. And so I feel like it's such a difficult cycle to break, that employers take advantage of employees in this way because they know that they can. And there's very little wiggle room the other side to make the employers stand up and take note. But I just think really and truly just accept things for the way that they are, for your own peace of mind, for the sense that you can work here, learn, take the lessons from the experience as much as possible, allow it to propel you onto the next thing. But just don't spend time in comparison. It's the worst thing that you can do. It's what I did at the beginning. And I think really for like the beginning part of my time at the Montessori school, I made myself feel rubbish for this reason. So really and truly, this is the way it is here in Italy. Like it or lump it. If it's not for you, maybe don't come and work here. It's a hard thing to say, but I say it with so much love, because honestly, like, things here don't work the way that they should all the time. And there are many practices that go on that shouldn't go on, like, you know, untaxed money, workers working without a contract. I could go on and on, but these things exist here and people don't talk about them enough, but it's true. And so you've got to decide if this is the kind of life that you want to lead. And if it is, then fantastic, because you'll be able to accept things for what they are, do the best that you can, and actually build a life that you truly desire in this country. I would also not be afraid to open a Partita Iva. There is a lot of scaremongering about this in Italy. Like, I was dissuaded for such a long time to open a Partita Iva, but actually in the end I did it. And this is not the Partita Iva I had at my school, because I closed that down when I left that job, but this is the Partita Iva that I have for this brand and this business. And I have to be honest with you, I'm happy with the way that I've opened it. I'm happy with the accounting services that I use. I'm happy for the fact that I am doing something under my own terms. And it's this that I want to say to you. There are so many people that make a success of businesses here in Italy. It's not easy. The taxes are, I cannot even begin to explain, mind-blowing. But what I will say to you is that if you really have a desire to start a business here, don't be dissuaded. There are so many successful companies that exist in this country. And I think there is a lot of scaremongering that puts potential new businesses kind of off opening and starting something here. So think about what you're doing. Obviously, educate yourself on the landscape, educate yourself on the taxes, educate yourself on the costs, because it does cost quite a bit of money to open a business. It is true. But essentially, again, it ties back into acceptance, accepting things for what they are here, and just making a go of it. I think it's this. You've got to try things sometimes to see if they work for you. And yes, you're going to be upfronting money, absolutely. But the fact is, if you want to start a business in Italy, you need to have a Partita Iva. You need to have some kind of record of your employment. So I would say, make a decision that's right for you, but don't necessarily listen to the scaremongering. You've got to decide alone if it's the best decision for you. But these are all the things that I would do differently if I were planning to work in Italy for the first time. If you've enjoyed this video, this is the one that I think you should watch next. And ultimately, what I want to say to each and every one of you who's in this position is that no two journeys will ever look the same. No two people's experiences here in Italy will ever be the same. And so sometimes I think you've just got to go in, eyes wide open, be knowledgeable, be aware, but just carve out your own path in this country and then see exactly what happens next. I will see you in the next video.